Good. So my voice is audible, visible? Yeah? Good. So let's start the day, guys. I know it's a Friday morning and afternoon, but yeah, we'll try to go in a very smooth manner for this webinar and, an hour engaging webinar for our great speakers. So let's start the day, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who could make their presence in this supply chain webinar. Hope you all are having a great day. Today, we have an opportunity to engage in a thought-provoking discussion with a great set of speakers. So I, on behalf of AI Core Spot, welcome all our esteemed guest speakers, the moderator, and all the pretty faces that makes up our lovely audience. Let me initiate with a humble introduction of myself and the company. My name is Nitin Naveen, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm working as Vice President, Innovation and Strategy at AI Core Spot. And I bring with me an experience of around a couple of decades in different consulting firms dealing in and around the emerging technologies. Speaking about the company AI Core Spot, we started a couple of years back, supported by our knowledge and innovation partner, InfoVision. AI Core Spot aims to function as a comprehensive knowledge hub, offering valuable information and perspectives on a wide range of cutting-edge technologies, with the objective of offering an in-depth exploration of all the sectors that involves technology. We introduce a different theme every month, and we have been progressively gaining momentum. Our goal is to become the leading AI-driven community worldwide, where individuals with similar interests like you can contribute to mutual growth and success. We prioritize industry-backed webinars and hybrid events, ensuring that our knowledge base is built on credible data provided by subject matter experts, thought leaders, and all our trusted partners. Further, we nurture the content through various mechanisms like blogs, videos, podcasts, and newsletters to shed light on the ever-evolving industry. So join us today for one-of-a-kind webinar focused on a great topic, which is future-ready supply chain, innovating with Gen AI integration. We'll cover a range of topics here, which includes AI and Gen AI impact, improving efficiency in supply chain, future of technology in supply chain, and so on. Our expert panel will provide valuable insights and engage in a thought-provoking discussion that you might not want to miss. And just to let you know, there are lots more in store for the next month, with focus on different technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, AR, VR, digital twins, metaverse, ChatGPT, quantum computing, and so on. So may I take this opportunity to further request all of you to go through our website, which is aicorespot.io, for future updates. We'll be delighted if you could show your love for us via likes and shares on our social media handles. It will keep you all updated on everything that we propose to offer in the coming months to follow. Further, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to my colleagues, Erwin and Naveen, for their hard work and dedication in making this event a success. They will also be stepping in to resolve technical glitches if it comes in between. So here are a few pointers which I wish to highlight before starting this webinar. We would like to introduce our community partners for today. It includes some great companies: Geodis, InfoVision, Paper Transport, Wesco, Cisco, and Flexport, who came together to make this webinar a success. We also like to thank all our attendees who took the time to register and join us today. It means to us that you are here to achieve your objectives and connect with one another. Ultimately, our goal as a platform is to help you gain valuable insights and build meaningful relationships. So if you walk away with even just a few innovative ideas or connections, we'll consider it a job well done. Now let me hand over the stage to Samir, who is Chief Business Officer handling retail, consumer good, and logistics at InfoVision. He's also the moderator for this panel discussion. Joining him today, there are 5 great leaders. Let me introduce one by one to each one of you. The first panel member is Paul, who is Director of Operational Excellence for Packaging and Customization Services at Geodis. The second panel member is Sandeep, who is Chief Information Officer at Paper Transport. The third panel member is Arjun, who is Director of Data Science at Wesco. The fourth panel member is Preetham, who is Director Inbound Supply Chain Technology at Cisco. And our esteemed fifth panel member is Siddharth, who is Engineering Leader, Director for Demand Engineering Org at Flexport. So just one line disclaimer before we start. The views shared by all the speakers are their personal ones, and it's not related to any organization. So over to you, Samir, to begin this exciting panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitin. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for being there, registering for this webinar. Also, I thank all our esteemed panel members being joining us for this particular discussion. So as you all know, the discussion topic today is our supply chain and how is the innovation, especially on the AI, ML, and the Gen AI side, is impacting our supply chain, and what are the future that we have in store for us in that supply chain area. I'll give you some data points. I'll tell you when the Open AI and the Chat GPT were launched, they clicked 100 million users in the first 2 months when they were launched. There was a scenario where I think there were companies where they stopped hiring people. I quote, IBM stopped hiring around 8,000 positions because their CEO believed that these roles could be done by the Gen AI. With these two data points, and I'll go further when we go as per the conference, as per the webinar, I would probably open this my discussion with Sandeep. Sandeep, I would kind of tell me how does the Gen AI or the AI ML impact, or what do you see the future of Gen AI as part of your overall industry going forward?
Gen AI is absolutely going to transform the way we work. If you look at the technology evolutions, some of them are hard trends where it's just a matter of time where it will happen. Some of them are soft trends where it may or may not happen. But from a Gen AI perspective, it is looking like a hard trend. It is just a matter of time where majority of the companies will be utilizing some sort of Gen AI. The way I see Gen AI in the future, majority of the companies would have their own version of Gen AI. For example, I work for paper transport. We are planning to roll out Paper GPT, which is customized for paper transport, that understands anything and everything about paper transport. And you will be able to interact with the system and ask meaningful questions near real time, and you would get the data. Also, I do see Gen AI as making rest of the other technologies productive. If you have a machine learning model, a predictive analytics model, or an RPA, Gen AI brings all these technology together as a glue, because you'll be able to ask any question from your chat. It would go to the right place, bring the right information, and provide it to you right in one simple screen that is actionable. And one other use case that I do see is it's not just pulling the information. In the future, we will be able to write back information to numerous systems. We all get bogged down with having multiple systems, multiple usernames, passwords, and whatnot. But in the future, it might boil down to just a couple of applications where in the front end for our users, and that would go back to where it needs to go in the back end.
Thank you, Sandeep. Again, on the same topic, I'll probably open this for all the other panel members, and I'll go next to Siddharth. Siddharth, based on your past experience and your current organization that you work with, I would request to share some more details on the Gen AI and the way that you're using it for your supply chain or any of the work that you're using right now.
Sure. So, like you said, the context about the explosion of interest in the Gen AI. For the audience member, and I'd also like to set the context what level of intelligence Gen AI offers today, why Gen AI becomes important in industries, especially supply chain, and then we will talk about how we are planning to use it today and in future. So I was reading this article from a scientist who was one of the catalyst in developing the LLMs. And they say that the LLMs today, as we compare to human intelligence, sits somewhere near to cat or mouse type of intelligence. So that's the gap of the intelligence that the Gen AI model have today. Though it's a big leap from the previous generation, but still they sit there. So they can't take decision on their own. They can, replicate things for the trainings that they have been given. So that's one aspect. Now, even with that intelligence, why does it becomes more important, especially in the supply chain industry, is that we all will understand that supply chain industry consists of numerous touch points. It is not one industry, there is one touch point you go. So this is a very operations heavy and a industry which has multiple touch points right from the manufacturing of the good originating in your warehouse, then shipping, trucking, airplanes, cargo, customs, whatnot. You name one aspect of thing, and supply chain touches there. So that makes it very difficult for human to analyze or collect these amount of data and touch point and provide some suggestions on top of that. So the Gen AI or AI today is being used on the data lakes that we have to provide some insights onto the data. That's one use case, which are not like BI dashboards. I'm not talking about the BI dashboard. Those insights which are beyond BI dashboards and hidden from human eye, that is something that we are trying to bring it out. The second use case that we are trying right now is the training aspect. Now it is very difficult to find out one agency who can train people on these multiple touch points. So training has given, Gen AI has given us a very good leap in training the people who onboard with us, and then providing them real life simulations of things that they'll be working upon in future. In future, of course, as we will discuss, there are multiple use cases that can be thought about, like network simulation, warehouse optimization, revenue optimization is a great thing which is coming up. How do we maximize the revenue from shipping? So these are the use cases, and as we discuss along, I'll love to deep dive upon these use cases.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Yeah.
So I will read. I think good that you mentioned that cat and mouse example, because it's important, because the Gen AI or any kind of AI ML model or algorithm is based on something like it's a learning exercise, right? What has happened in the past, the algorithm and the model learned something, and then implements that how to refine for that particular scenario in the future. But what we have seen in the last 3, 4, 5 years, being part of the IT industry and being part of the supply chain, what we have seen is supply chain actually throws up all different kinds of scenarios and risks and potential challenges going forward. And I think that's where, how can we effectively use the cat and mouse kind of the modeling out there for the future challenges. Probably we'll discuss it in the future. Arjun, I'll open it for you as well, because you come from a data background. And data is the key component for any of the model that needs to be worked, whether it is Gen AI, AI, or any of those things. So how are you looking at the Gen AI part of your organization or your journey?
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Samir. So the way I would say is kind of to dovetail on what Siddharth and then Sandeep are alluding to. That is, we have been not just the supply chain industry, but what I see is that when you think of data and analytics perspective, people are starting to think of what competitive advantage that that it can fetch you, right? And we have already transitioned from an insights to that foresights part as we speak. And by that, what I mean is, we just don't do statistical modeling or just like look at the descriptive statistics and say what happened and why did it happen. We are, a lot of the companies are doing predictive modeling and prescriptive modeling to see what will happen, how can we make it happen, right? So we are already in that zone now. The way I see with enterprise LLM and with Gen AI is that I can see the transition from foresights to action. That's where the value add is. That's where competitive advantage to the businesses. And to me, it's going from prescriptive modeling to preemptive modeling, right? What more can I do? Come up with the set of like your simulations or scenarios which can help you drive actionable decisions and add value to the business. So I think that's the place where I see under the context of LLM, if it works at enterprise scale, because we are still in that hype cycle. In that hype cycle, I would say we are to go from a proof of concept to proof of value, unlike any earlier technology, say like deep learning or even MLs first came into the picture. We are seeing that hype or the value can be realized faster. But the thing is that how can you scale? That is yet to be seen at this part. How can you scale? How can you keep the cost to manageable extent, but still continue to add that value and continue to add that actionable insights through preemptive modeling? So that's kind of the way I see it's yet to be completely explored and seen at scale. But obviously that hype there, we are all like riding that hype as we speak.
Got it. Absolutely. And I'll extend this question to Preetham, and then I'll come to you, Paul. So Preetham, How do you kind of see that happening in your area?
Yeah, absolutely, Samir. And a lot of my inputs probably will be an extension of what Sandeep and Siddharth and Arjun spoke already. I mean, as we all know, I think the world, it's almost like divided into like a pre 30th November 2022 and a post 30th November 2022 era, right? When ChatGPT was introduced. But at the end of the day, right, Gen AI is if we look at from a hype cycle, like look at a Gartner hype cycle, I think Gen AI is at the initial phase of the hype cycle. There is a lot of research going on. There is a lot of interest. And I agree. I mean, Gen AI is looking more and more to be all pervasive, right? Whether it is, and it's not necessarily supply chain. Supply chain is but a microcosm of our society as a whole, right? So if you look at training, which was brought up, if we are looking at democratization, you talked about the story where like IBM is potentially kind of stopping hiring for certain headcounts, right, because of Gen AI. So the whole democratization of analytics, that is a big opportunity. From a supply chain perspective, of course, from a supply chain operations perspective, whether it is warehouse operations automation, whether it is from a planning perspective, kind of to integrate data from some of the Gen AI from LLM, right, to feed into like better forecasting model, better revenue optimization, or better costing algorithms. I think Gen AI is hitting all these areas, whether it is planning, whether it is operations. So yeah, it's ironic that, and I'm pretty sure you all know that, the core, in some ways, it's an extension of reinforcement learning and deep learning, right? Especially if you're talking about LLM. And it's ironic that 2017, the initial paper that was published, which kind of formed the bedrock of LLM, was called "Attention is All You Need." And I think that's ironic, and I think that is exactly what we need as individuals, as professionals. We need to pay a lot of attention to how it is evolving. And yeah, exciting times ahead.
Excellent, Preetham. Thank you very much. Paul, over to you, please. A little bit. I know people have spoken about Gen AI and everything, but I would like to hear from you about what are you doing in terms of, let's say, all the kind of innovation and good work that you are doing on your side, Paul. And I think you were talking, when we were discussing earlier, we were talking about the collaboration using some of the latest technologies. How are you seeing everything coming along in your area? Paul, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I think that's a very good question. So for operational excellence, I do believe that the collaboration platforms is really the backbone of for the supply chain as it relates to AI, as well as AI is actually improving to help real-time communication. So just to give you an example, with AI, it actually helps you to, when you're using real-time communication, you can instantly share your production updates, you can share inventory issues, you could be able to instantly communicate to your customer as far as how you can actually proceed with orders and in a timely fashion, as well as continue to use it for data analytics. It also helps when it comes to facilitating faster decision-making processes as well, and which will ultimately help to reduce lead times, which is what operational excellence is all about. What we're kind of using it for right now is that we're trying to use it from production schedules to help from a predictive standpoint. That's kind of where we are from our standpoint right now. And in addition to that, we're actually using it also as it relates to robotics. We're trying to get it to where we can where the system is actually able to use various types of material to pick and place products. So that's kind of where we are as it relates to operational excellence as well as supply chain.
Thank you, Paul. I think I got some all the views from all of you guys. I just want to deep dive into, so the way I'm looking at some of the use cases on the Gen AI, for example, I can classify that use cases into, let's say, customer focused or customer centric or customer facing. That's more generating for the sales perspective. Then I see a lot of from a backend call center and all those things operations. How do we do our transformation from a Gen AI standpoint? And then I also see, as we are going to discuss now into detail, is the operational excellence that I think Paul also mentioned about that. And one of the operational excellence component is coming from the supply chain side. I think how do we make sure that we are impacting the supply chain in the positive way? So again, I would like to start again. I'll go from, let's say this time I'll probably start with Siddharth. Siddharth, with your experience in the past with Amazon and all those things, and how have you seen, or what are the use cases that you have seen where Gen AI is impacting or having a positive impact on for either for like operational excellence in terms of improving the forecasting accuracy, or as Paul mentioned about using the robots along with the humans and the Gen AI impacting those things. So what kind of use cases do you think are going to be impacting us or is impacting right now for us?
Thanks, Samir, for that question. Yeah, I think as Pritam was saying, right, there is since that 2022 when the Gen AI or Chat GPT was introduced, there has been a lot of hype and interests generated in the generative AI area, but AI and ML has been in the industry for long. So maybe my responses will be a mix of AI and ML use and generative AI use. One of the very important thing is that because of the hype, we should not try to retrofit an AI ML use case. One of our job as a data scientist or in the engineering head in the company is to make sure that we are targeting the right use cases and not retrofitting a use case to make sure that we have an AI ML solution for that. Right. So, and many places I've seen that people will come up with a solution first and then say, let's fit it into a problem. So, having said that context, one of the things that we talk, I think that the AI ML and generative AI has been very helpful in the lead generation. So when we say lead generation, means people who are showing interests to do business with the companies. That is an area which is very, very ambiguous, and it's very difficult to predict. Somebody is just coming up because your site browsed with some thing, or they are actually have some interest in that. So this lead generation, we have a lot of data from company website, what they plan to do and what they not plan to do, and when they're landing on our website. This data there are algorithms which we use to generate the leads for us. And then once the lead is generated, the next step that we want to do right now is to have a very customized demoing approach to them so that they understand that if they partner with us, what is the benefit that they are going to achieve. So that's very one interesting use case that I'm working upon right now. There are other use cases. I'll not say generative AI per se, but the AI has been helping, specifically as I was talking about the route optimization for shipping, the pick path optimization. So if you go to order management, if you get an order, how do I optimize my picking path for that order management? So these are very small things, but they're heavily nuanced for optimization, and the impact that they can have on your operating hours at the warehouses can be significant. So these are the areas that I significantly see that the Gen AI or AI in as a whole is impacting in our.
Thank you, Sid. So we spoke about the route optimization, the last mile optimization per se. I think I want to hear kind of ideas from, let's say, maybe I'll go to Pritam again. Pritam, your views on in terms of, because you are looking at the inbound side of the supply chain part of it. So and Siddharth spoke about the outbound part of it as a last mile and all those things. So how do you see things happening in your area with the Gen AI? So from the inbound supply chain side.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think I will again echo some of the things that Siddharth just spoke, right? That I'll talk about Gen AI, and AI ML as a whole, right? Because I view that this as a subset, right? I also want to kind of echo his words in terms of we should be careful in terms of being looking for of having the hammer and looking for the nails, right? So we should first look at the problem and then try to solve it rather than the other way around, right? And now coming back to AI, ML, and in particular Gen AI use cases in inbound. And let me first define inbound, right? As you talked about inbound supply chain. So in my perspective, in my areas of responsibility and influence, that is defined as anything that is needed to get products from your suppliers to your warehouses, right? So that encompasses demand planning, forecasting, purchase order life cycle management, so kind of core procurement, inventory management, of course, supplier collaboration, as well as inbound logistics, right? So I think it's important to define that. So in that perspective, let's look at piece by piece. So let's look at forecasting. I think everybody knows the importance of forecasting and the impact that AI ML is having in terms of getting more nuanced data, more external demand signals to generate forecast. And it's not only about just the accuracy piece of it, right? It is also about how quickly and how frequently do you generate, right? So it's gone are the days when we just rely on kind of long-term forecasting, right? Like monthly even, right? So we are talking weekly, daily, even multiple times a day. And that's where I think there is a big overlap. And I like what Arjun said about, data engineering. At the end of the day, we all know about garbage in, garbage out, right? So it's almost like data engineering also is kind of getting revolutionized with the advent of more, data platforms, usage of data lakes, data warehouse, and more advancements. So forecasting is definitely one that I could see. I could see a lot of potential in terms of utilizing natural language processing and an extension of natural language processing in terms of natural language querying, and in a way LLM, large language models, for overall collaboration between organizations, right? So when a supplier is asking for us to change something on an order, right, or vice versa, right? Instead of, I do see this being a very prevalent use cases where we probably gradually stop looking at multiple different ecosystems, multiple systems, go to this system and update, and instead use some of the AI ML capabilities, integrate a seamless natural language processing to do this kind of life cycle management. Definitely supply chain visibility is a big topic, and I'm talking about inbound here. Even then, right, whether it is it's very important to have near real-time visibility to ensure better on-time in full, which is kind of the lifeblood of any supply chain. So these three are I would say the big ones, but of course, all three can be discussed for hours, right? And there are small examples of that, but those are the three that I talk about.
Absolutely, and I'll kind of continue this to Sandeep yourself. I think Sandeep, I wanted to check with you as well as to what are I know Preetham and Sid talk about some of the use cases, but I want to get from overall your perspective as well, please.
Yes, absolutely. Route optimization is one critical area where we can benefit a lot for our transportation business. We get paid based on the number of miles that we drive. When we get so many incoming orders, we want to minimize the number of miles that we do not get paid, because we have to efficiently plan our routes. We call them deadhead miles. On an average, our deadhead miles are about 25% of the miles that our drivers drive. It would cost us a lot of fuel, and we still have to pay our drivers. If we can use some smart algorithms to minimize the number of deadhead miles, that could gain huge benefits for our business. So we are working on a planning solution. Yes, there have been a lot of models, but the way I see generative AI is bringing in a lot more parameters than the standard route optimization algorithms. For example, it can look at real-time weather forecast to see, hey, how's the weather? Should I reroute the driver and dynamically change the routes? Or is there an incident that happened on the highway? Or it can also include driver availability, which might change in real time. There might some things might happen. So all these would plug in together, and we can optimize the routes for our drivers, thereby minimizing the number of deadhead miles that we drive. One other really cool use case that we just implemented with the AI ML model is we implemented a new order acceptance system where we look at the incoming orders from our customers, and we get to decide if we want to take the order or not based on the profitability. It is not an easy decision because it involves a lot of parameters in terms of how much is the customer willing to pay, what is the market rate for that, do we have a truck available, do we have a driver available, do we want to go that route or not. There are so many data points that our customer service team has to analyze before accepting an order. We recently implemented a machine learning model that would look at all these parameters and provides a simple recommendation saying that, yep, take this order or don't take it because you take this because it's profitable for you, or don't take it, you would lose $200. Interesting enough, it might be able to even go a step beyond and say, you're going to lose $300 on this order, but I would still recommend you take it because it's good for your network. You have too many trucks in Chicago, but you want more trucks in Jacksonville, Florida. So it makes sense for you than just having a driver move the truck. You might as well make some money. So we are super excited about this, and it's working well.
So Sandeep, that's a very, very, very valid point. And I'll add one scenario which, so you mentioned Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I am today, in Jacksonville, Florida. But I had a meeting with a customer yesterday, and there was a good use case or the question that they were asking. And they were asking pertaining to Gen AI. And then they were saying that, is there a way that I can minimize my let's say if my equipment or my truck or any of those things is at some place, can I minimize my non kind of paying miles, in the sense like if my truck is coming back empty, can I use Gen AI to kind of schedule that kind of stuff? So there are some very, very awesome use cases customers are really trying to explore, making sure that their utilization is high. They're they're losing money on the empties that are coming in, so they want to minimize those kind of stuff. So again, that's a beautiful thought process. I also want to talk about a little bit the questions that are coming from the customers, and I think there is one question which is pertaining to data, and I think what I want is basically Arjun, I'll come to you before asking that question to you. With all these things implemented out there, how do you look at standardizing the data platform or making sure, because now we are talking about both structured and unstructured data, because this is being all people are making decisions based on both the data, and there is how do you look at the data platforms right now before we start implementing the Gen AI or any kind of AI/ML models right now?
Yeah, right. No, that's a great question. I would say it's going to be an ongoing process, and what I mean by that is, depending on where your company is, in what stage you are, how many ERP systems you have, how many sources you are connected to from IoT or mobile or web, you need to come up with a data strategy, right? In the past, it was always data warehousing. We're already going to data lake right now. So unification and standardization of that is kind of continually happening from, from what I see from a lot of enterprises. And at the same time, to your question on utilizing this for Gen AI, it is, as you said, it is structured data, unstructured data. We're kind of getting into this world where it's not just textual data that you get from tables and whatnot that sits in your ERP, right? You need to be able to say, scan images, have a repository of images, have a repository of videos, have a repository of unstructured data. So that ecosystem platform providers, data platform providers like Snowflake and Databricks are already making a lot of inroads into that. So as a supply chain company, as a non-technology company, you should be able to take advantage of that. So that is on one side. And then on the other side, like having an internal strategy within the company, so be it a part of your own data and analytics org or data office, whatever you call that, it should be baked in your CIO or your CDO strategy. Like how are you going to be like continually looking at data, not creating silos in the data, but at the same time make sure that you have role-based access and all that, right? So it becomes kind of a pull and a push there. And then depending on your use case, always start with the use case, right? You don't have to boil the ocean. So if your Gen AI use case is, for instance, just like looking at all images, for whatever reason, you have a lot of warehouses across the world, and then you have a database of images. So if you want to look at all kind of images, like embed that with textual information that you get from ERP, which could be product description coming from suppliers and whatnot, then you come up with a data strategy to be fit for purpose for that. And then add to that whatever use cases it is, and then just try to tackle that problem one at a time. Because one thing I've seen is people get overwhelmed when they think about it. Like for instance, in my company and then where I've worked in the past also, every time when we start discussing about data, that they throw like stones and wrenches into it, right? And then like they say, hey, like GDPR, HIPAA, PII information. And then for a lot of the use cases that we look at, there is no people information there. So know your data, understand the implications of your data, and then understand what restrictions you need to put. And then if it needs, and like as I said, certain role-based access, then do that. If it does not, then clear the silos, because all the teams need to come together, right? Like the way I see that is with the Gen AI, the buck is shifting to the end user. It's not a data science developer intensive effort anymore. So which means you need to be empowering. Think of that hub and spoke model. Everybody should be able to touch and access the data. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make the progress, especially with Gen AI. So just want to get that point across as well.
And in fact, the question that came from Mark Johnston was almost like similar question that you answered. So the question was, generative pre-trained models like DALL-E can create realistic synthetic data, but how do we ensure that data accurately reflects real-world distributions? What techniques show promise for mitigating this bias? That was the question. So I know part of the question was answered by you, but I would look at Preetham, if you can probably answer talking about the synthetic data and how do we remove the biases out there. I had some discussion point on the bias, but I think we can answer the bias here as well, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is a very, very valid point, very valid question. And, bias or hallucination, as we talk in the LLM or Gen AI terms, right? There are ways to do that. There are right now, if you look at it, there is a whole topic called RLHF, or reinforcement learning with human feedback, right? So you can tune your model to a point, and then of course integrate it with the human feedback loop to kind of eliminate that bias. Now, what is another thing that is happening with the advancement of in this area and a lot of research, and it's an evolving area, right? The models are getting better in terms of providing the customization level that you can choose. You can choose how creative or how not the model can be creative, right? When somebody is giving you the answers, right? So I think it's a combination of using like design patterns, using model tuning more efficiently, using human feedback in the loop, and the customizations, right? So I think it's a combination of all four in my mind, Sandeep.
Okay. Any other views?
Quick comment there, Samir. Biases we need to be super careful when we do these models. There was a classic failure that happened in 2018 when Amazon tried to screen the incoming applicants and looking at a model to pre-screen to see if the applicant would fit the job requirement. When the model was let go to figure out its own parameters, it started preferring males over females, because it looked at the data and said there are a lot of male applicants that are getting hired than female applicants. That means there must be something good about males, which we all know is absolutely not true. There is no gender discrimination in terms of hiring. So the model got into that bias, and Amazon had to shut down the model and go back to manual process of hiring. So it's super important to be clear, to kind of test it out, like Preetham mentioned, and still have human in the loop to make sure the models are doing what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Sandeep, I think there was a question. I think there was a question by Lindsay. What exactly was saying, what challenges should companies watch out when implementing GenAI in the supply chains? I think those are some of the things I think you answered there. Siddharth, I would come to you, and then Paul, I'll come to you to kind of, from your experience, what are the things that you are... Go ahead,
so, I mean, just to, because we are hearing so nice things about ChatGPT models and all, just to make sure that we're not underestimating how difficult Arjun's job is as a data scientist. Just imagine, model is an output of 80% of the work done for bringing that output is data cleanup and collection of the data. Data is, and I'll talk specifically about the supply chain industry. I have implemented in a previous venture an onboarding platform where multiple type of companies from micro to SMBs to large companies can come and integrate with our platform. And the biggest challenge that I faced was that all the inbounds and outbounds are not, there is no standard for that. It can start from an email, it can start from an Excel file, it can be a PDF, it can be EDIs, it can be your API call, anything and everything is possible in that data. So, and the variance I'll tell you, during the COVID era, I was doing a hackathon with the one of the medical associations, and the hackathon was to find out all the researches that has been published during the COVID and find out patterns of discovery in that. 90% of that researches were published on PDF, right? And remaining 10% was available on internet. So the task of collecting the data was so easy there across the globe. And we are talking about one industry where the input data is very, very difficult. So one of the biggest challenge for customizing or doing anything modeling or AI, ML, AR, VR on your company is that how good the quality of data you have. If you don't have garbage in, garbage out, as Preetham was telling, right? So if you give a garbage data, you will get garbage out. If you give wrong food to cat and mouse, they will give you wrong training. They will behave like that. That's what I'm telling. That's the biggest challenge. The other thing that we are not thinking about is the cost implication. Though the offering as a model as a service, let's say, or AI as a service is available right now from multiple people, but it requires a lot of in-house knowledge to keep monitoring those models, keep the data cleanup, and also the cost is not less, right? So that's one area where company needs to think whether we want to invest in that area or not, and how futuristic my roadmap looks like. The third thing was as Arjun was talking about, to bringing in things into standardized form. We have to think that there are thousands of supply chain companies, right from managing from single truck. So there are single truck owners who have opened an LLC and they're doing the trucking business. So there are thousands of truck owners. What is the incentives that I am providing to them to come to my standard? Why should they invest in a laptop when their work is done on a mobile? So there is no incentive for those people. There's no margins for those people to come to incentives. And we have tried all these things, and that's why I'm telling. So these are the very difficult challenges in the industry that it exists today. To start thinking about AI and ML on a holistic way. There are silos or isolated use cases, as I was telling. Digital twins, use digital twins to do the network optimization, costing optimization. As Sandeep was pointing out, one of the area is the path optimization. For any truck and every truck to do, you come up with a route planning, which is intelligence based, which will give you the maximization in your revenue. Thinking about multiple things, seasonality, accessorials, and whatnot. Right. So these are the individual cutoff use cases where there is sufficient data available where you can apply ML. On a holistic way, the road is still long. We need to travel a long way on that.
Absolutely. And I think I'll have one more question read out, and I think Paul, this is pertaining. I'll give it to you. So the question is, when addressing a large-scale supply chain operations, we encounter a multitude of touch points and wide array of combination. How can we harness he's mentioned power of GenAI, but I'm leaving it to AI, ML, and any of those things to lower the supply chain cost while maintaining transparency and preserving essential business KPIs. So any comments, Paul, on that one?
I think the first thing is to understand that, from my perspective, that technology is definitely going to be the cornerstone as it relates to supply chain and operational excellence. So a good example that we've already kind of talked about is data analytics, as well as AI as it relates to forecasting and forecasting demand as it relates to production criteria. Um, One of the main things that we should be looking for would be make sure that we're not spending too much money as it relates to overstocking products, which we all know is a waste, as well as the opposite end of it, which is not having enough products for the customer, which is causing out of stocks, right? So we can actually use AI to actually create certain demand patterns to adjust your production schedule, which can also help you save time and resources based off that. In addition to that, you can also implement blockchain technology to improve transparency with the supply chain operations. So what that would do, that'll actually allow you to help you when it comes to tracking of goods, eliminating the risk of tampering and counterfeiting, as well as to help with automating systems, as well as robotics, optimizing in your warehouse processes. For us, relying on robotics to actually help to efficiently sort and package orders, which in turn helps to deliver product to the customer effectively. One thing that you mentioned, that was mentioned previously, we talked about, was some of the challenges that actually could arise with AI. I do think that change management is a key aspect that we haven't covered yet. So working in operational excellence, change management is one of the key things that we need to make sure that we're communicating effectively to our team, as well as to our leadership, about the importance of AI and how we can help to develop our people to be bought in on AI. Because if we're not explaining the need for it, then what arises later on is hostility towards it.
Thank you. Well, that is good, very good actually. And just picking up on that point you mentioned about the change management aspect and other things. So I think I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on. So there are a lot of people who are planning to implement Gen AI in their organizations. So Pranab, if I may start with you, what are the few key things that they need to start right, or they need to do the groundwork correctly before they can start implementing any of those Gen AI tools or any of the AML models?
You meant Preetham or?
Oh, Preetham, I'm sorry, Preetham.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. See, I think again that's a great point, and almost like borrowing from Hamlet, like where we talk to be or not to be. It's almost like to do or not to do, right? It's like especially with Gen AI, and I'll talk about AI ML as well. Sandeep was talking about having, you gave the example of like paper GPT, right, where you are creating your own model or your own Gen AI module, which can be fine-tuned for your industry, for your company. So I think that's a classic dilemma, right? Whether to there are pros and cons, right? Of course, it will really help you harness the power of Gen AI, and you really don't have to rely on like generic outputs or even hallucination. I think it will result in a lot of less hallucinations, better outputs. The flip side of it is, again, the flops, right? Floating point operations per unit per second. And I kind of jokingly tell people that it's flops which can really make your project a hit or a flop, because at the end of the day, it's extremely costly, right? So I think a lot of times we are in a dilemma, and the main determinant is, for sometimes, right, is whether we can monetize the data, right? If we are building our own model, Can we monetize it with partners, right? Or is it just for our ecosystem? So that's one area I found like really interesting, especially what Sandeep was talking about. Now, coming back to the change management, I think it's very, very important to have a governance. We cannot underestimate governance, because the first challenge is, and for the Gen AI, I think it is overall related to AI, ML as well, and overall automation. I think one of the challenge is to actually work with business partners to look at the use cases and to work with them with a combination of like education, a combination of brainstorming, and to categorize them. That just because you have like hundreds of use cases does not mean that everything is AI ML. Some of them could be valid descriptive analytics use case. Some of them could be, for all you know, this could be system enhancements, right? Some of them could be interfaces. Some of them could be RPAs, right? And then some of them could be like AI ML, and then some of them could be Gen AI. And even when we are talking about AI ML or Gen AI, I think we also have to categorize, can something be integrated with some of the systems that we are doing, like embedded analytics, or do we invest in like a Gen AI platform, or rather an AI ML or a data analytics platform? So I think that governance structure, creating that whole culture and ecosystem of vetting those ideas and getting alignment, I think is the crux of getting alignment from business and make the project successful. So absolutely important, Samir.
Thank you. Thank you, Preetham. Arjun, I will come to you, and probably I'll ask a further question. When you start implementing or going around some things, how do you distill the ideas, basically, for all the use cases that you plan to implement within your organization?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And I would say I will double click on what Preetham earlier talked about, because first, even before you start with that use case distillation, or in parallel, everybody needs to have some kind of a COE, some kind of a governing body where you have a steering committee with all the stakeholders from the business, because it's not just an IT or a technology responsibility anymore. Business needs to be a part of it, right? So just want to like double click on that. Use case distillation, my view is, I mean, there are tons of articles. So I've been like researching this externally through other thought leadership exercises, and also like internally talking to like business leaders. My point of view is, have your own 2x2 representation or 3x3, how much ever you want. But I try to be as simple as possible. Think of your use cases, like work with your stakeholder steering committee to start to like distill the use cases. If it comes top down, that is easier because you can gain traction, and then put them in, like, especially with the advent of Gen AI. Gen AI is like nothing but an advanced version of your NLP, right? I mean, at least for now, we are not going into the multimodal aspect yet. We are still taking large language models. We are still calling it like LLM because it's an advancement of NLP, just that it can handle a lot more parameters and run way more faster than your traditional NLP algorithms could do. So to me, the way I would like dissect it is accuracy versus fluency, right? On one axis, put your accuracy; on the other axis, put your fluency. For things like forecasting, now as it pertains to the supply chain industry, for things like forecasting or any like recommendation in your pricing or how you choose your suppliers, anything that you want to put in front of your customers, I would probably rate it in the higher accuracy bucket. And on the other side, if you know, a lot of the LLM use cases, a lot of the Gen AI use case we see, it's more on the customization, more on the personalization. So they require a higher degree of fluency, like you can think of fluency on the y-axis, but then you can compromise on the accuracy because it's a textual output. You are asking it to summarize a contract. You are asking it to generate an SOW or a contract for you, right? So I'm not saying that you can completely compromise on the accuracy, but then you can afford to have a lower degree of accuracy, but then you need to have a higher degree of fluency. And then within that 2x2 matrix, put a valuation to it. That has to be, again, if you have the business in the loop, they can help you, right? Like, what is the ROI? What's the value attached to that? And then chase the use cases where it is low stakes, low risk, because as Preetham aptly pointed out earlier, you need to know what the risks are. There are risks associated with your traditional cloud security, right? Like if you download an LLM from Hugging Face, like an open source, what are the risks associated with that? Both your data exposure and the model governance risk are there. Or if you take and Azure OpenAI managed service or Google managed service or AWS managed service, there are risks associated with that as well. So understanding, like once you understand the risk, then start to chase the ones where it is low stakes, where you're not probably exposing your data right away, right? Like where you can afford to, I mean, like where the stakes are low. And the effort is also low to mid, but then your value is kind of higher. So I would say tackle the ones which are in the lower accuracy, higher fluency bucket, which is all the content generation, content summarization, all that kind of, and a lot of the supply chain companies, we all have to deal with tons of contracts and whatnot. So I would say like start from there and then work your way up to like the forecasting, recommendation, optimization kind of use cases.
I think you have nicely put 2 by 2, 3 by 3, and decide where you want to attack that part. That's a very nice win. Sandeep, I'll come to you. What are the key things that you will tell any organizations, like key steps, while they are trying to implement the Gen AI concept? Actually,
Absolutely, it's having the right use case makes everything simple. As Preetham and Arjun rightly said, how do you define the use case, right? Probably I can point out 2 simple use cases for companies that wants to start this journey, but may not have the business on their side to who is super excited about going through this path. One use case, I'm hearing a lot about reading documents. For example, you have new onboarding. All of our companies do onboard employees. If you can train the model with all the new hire documents, it would be fantastic for a new hire to come in where they would have millions of questions. What about this? What about that? If you can provide a simple model that tells how your company operates with basic new hire questions, that would be a great onboarding experience for your employees. And majority of our companies should be able to implement that. And all it takes is really feeding a bunch of documents to the model. The second use case is probably more on the IT side, where we get a lot of help desk tickets, and a lot of them are repetitive. And if you can feed that and have it exposed to your business users, hey, how do I request a new mouse or a new keyboard, or how do I open a new security access incident? If generative AI can provide simple steps, that would eliminate the number of tickets. More than that, having these 2 use cases done, it would show the business on the potential other use cases that can be done. Sometimes you need to show small, that triggers a lot of thought ideas for a lot of people in the business. We can talk about generative AI all day long, but until you implement it and run through the practical applications, you will not be able to cross those hurdles.
Very well said, Sandeep. I think there is one question that is there by Brian on the chat window, and I'll just read it out for everyone. So, how do you achieve revenue optimization via Gen AI? Are there any particular use cases that would drive this capability? Sid, do you want to kind of try and attempt to answer this question?
Definitely, I'll take a shot and to understand the challenge or the solution here. We first need to understand the areas where revenue loss or you spend money. So one of the biggest challenge, it sounds very simple, but the more load the truck in the trucks or the containers on the airplane if you're putting, the more efficient the transport is. In fact, there is a startup in Bay Area who has done a very, very good job, and a lot of companies are kind of taking their algorithms. They have patented an algorithm to how to make sure that your trucks, when running to and fro from the one area, they are running with the full load. If they are shipping something across the continent, they are running with the full container load. And similarly for airplanes, right? So this is, it sounds very simple, but it's very difficult with having the multiple sizes of the shipments that you have. So that's one area where it can boost up your revenue if you operate at maximum capacity to reduce your dead miles, what we are talking about. The other area, I think, inbound side, Preetham was touching about replenishments and having the optimum stock available at right warehouse. Sorry for touching too many points, but again, you have to understand the world is moving towards 2 days or same day or an hourly delivery now, right? And understand how challenging it is to deliver products to at your doorstep after 2 hours of your order or overnight order. How complicated the delivery network system will be. One of the simplest way that Amazon, for example, achieves this is by forecasting that if within this particular area, if there's my network center, I should already push certain products which are high in demand in these areas. So these kind of simulations will optimize your delivery time, hence your revenue, right?
Yep.
The other thing that we can also do, we are trying to do is the network simulation. This is one use case that I want to talk about. Now, network simulation is the simulation of your warehouse and the transporting network across a geography that you want to do. And typically, with the absence of large-scale data handling capabilities, was done once in a year. Some people will sit down and take out all the data analysis. With the capability of handling this large amount of data, this can be done more frequently. Added to that, there are facilities available like cloud storage now. You don't have to necessarily purchase a warehouse somewhere to start your storing facility. You can rent like a cloud storage. You can engage with partner company. They'll allow you to have a, a sort center there at least, if nothing else. So these kind of things we can do more frequently and with more, maybe with more data and suggestive action to start maximizing your revenue. Very minor few things that I'll touch upon it. We can talk again. This is such a nuanced topic, like seasonality, building in seasonality. This building is defaulters. For example, when you book, let's say something, and if you give a wrong address, the penalty for that is 10 times more than the shipping cost. So how do I make sure that we are, the accessorials or the errors that are there, how we are making sure that it is not charged. So these are multiple data points which are available right now. It is a matter of time when when we have sufficient data, we can train things and we start optimizing our revenues in certain areas. One of the things that at least we are trying to do is finding out good and bad actors based on the previous history. Finding out that there are shippers who are constantly doing something, for example, let's say violating package dimensions, right? So if somebody violates package, we are trying to give a scoring based on our data learning to different shippers, so that they can, we can have a better revenue model in our systems and incur less losses.
I hope, Brian, we answered your question. I think that was done very, very elaboratively and very nicely, actually, by Siddharth. Any other thoughts, Arjun or Sandeep or Paul or Pritam around that on the?
Sure, yeah, I just want to quickly add this because this was a very recent topic that I kind of heard at another roundtable like this as well, which think of your like if you, I mean, like all of us make sales, like all the enterprises make sales, and there is like the inside sales, there is the outside sales or the face-to-face sales, and then there is e-commerce. Now, when you think about like revenue generating opportunities under the context of revenue optimization, think of it as how can you apply automation and how can you apply data analytics in that e-commerce, right? Because that's where, like, and companies like Amazon, I've worked at Amazon in the past. Companies like Amazon have been at the forefront in that e-commerce. One of the area in context to GenAI, not just GenAI, I would say, in terms of SEO or search engine optimization, where a lot of companies are putting more emphasis on is how can you make the search more contextual. Now, again, you need to be able to understand under the umbrella of GenAI, it's not just a large language model. That's an agent or an orchestrator. The core, the fundamental core of that engine is how are you going to like represent your product or your SKUs or whatever is that in that embedding, like in that multi-dimensional vector. If you can enable that through your e-commerce engine and then show that you can improve sales because of having that contextual search capability through a smarter representation of your embeddings, and then like through your SEO offering, then that is one like that is one e-commerce focused application to kind of improve your revenues, I would say.
Absolutely. And good. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, just to add to it, overall, from a sourcing optimization perspective, that's again a big area, not necessarily for Gen AI, but overall AI ML as well, right? Where I mean, I could see in our organization, being the largest food service distributor in the world, we are dealing with thousands of suppliers. So how do you bring AI ML to kind of get different suppliers, what's their price points, and how do you do necessarily sourcing optimization, and also look at external factors. Like when we look at food industry, it is unique in a way that when you look at foods with like perishables, for example, right, which is very volatile in terms of cost, and it gets impacted significantly by external factors like weather, like drought or flood. Those are classic examples where we could get AI, ML, and a combination of Gen AI actually to bring the external factors, to bring more optimized pricing, which essentially improve in revenue optimization as well.
Thank you, Preetham. I think I just want to,
a couple of quick comments, Samir. The order acceptance system that we implemented that will help us maximize our revenues by minimizing, by doing the same amount of work, but we are picking more profitable loads than just randomly picking any loads. One other use case, it's more on the cost optimization side than revenue generation that we are super excited about, is we are doing a predictive analytics model that will rate the driver safety. What we were able to do is we were able to train all the accidents that happened to the model over the last couple of years. And then the job of the model is to predict who are our unsafe drivers that might run into an accident in the future so that we can try to prevent it by coaching them. Yeah. We have about 1,000 tractors and trailers that our drivers drive throughout the United States. On an average, we run into between 5 to 7 accidents every week. And these cost millions of dollars. If we can minimize that by 50%, that would be huge.
Thank you. I think that's a very valid point. I think we spoke about the excellence part of it. I also was having a discussion with a customer where they are using the Gen AI and the AI ML for the dynamic pricing also. Now, there are a lot of dynamic pricing engines that are being used, but I saw some things more relevance from a B2C standpoint, more rather than a B2B standpoint. But I think this is something which I have also talked to some of the customers. They are using Gen AI on that one. Having said that, I want to touch upon 2 more topics out there. One is pertaining to the question that was asked by Krishna Prasad. I think we have been talking about the AI, ML, Gen AI and all those things. He brought up a point of what are the technical requirements for leveraging the artificial reality and the virtual reality in training and maintenance within the supply chain. That is what he asked for. The other thing which is important we wanted to talk about was the digital twin. Now, the reason I brought up these 2 topics is I have seen a lot of customers using these 2 technologies pertaining to the supply chain, specifically in their particular industry, both the digital twin and the AR VR. So again, that's if at all, if you have experience, and I'll start with Preetham on the digital twin. Preetham, if you have any experience or have seen something on the digital twin side, or anybody who has any experience on the AR VR side in the supply chain, I would like to touch upon that, please.
Yeah, I think I do not have any immediate experience on AR VR, but I can touch on digital twin because that is something that we are discussing, right? And I think a couple of things when it comes from a digital twin perspective. Number one, and again that goes back to Arjun's and Siddharth's point on data infrastructure, right? It is extremely important to be ready for a digital twin, right? We need to move to a more real-time data ecosystem, right? That is number one. Number two is it's very relevant to operations, right? If we get a lot of cases where you have IoTs, when you have edge computing, etc., in some of your warehouses and through sensors, when you add a combination of real-time data, right? I think that can make digital twin a success, right? And then what is also important is to then attach like AI ML based decision making on top of it, so that at the end of the day you get a holistic and almost like a command center, right? Based on your digital twin, where based on which you can make informed decision. You can sense and react from and learn from your past experience and react accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else on this one? Digital twin. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, like I can add a little bit on the AR, VR aspect of things. So this comes from my experience in the past, actually. For the warehouse, when I was overseeing a program at Amazon, we kind of rolled out something. I mean, I don't want to say the name of that, but it's kind of an AR glass. Just imagine an AR glass for order pickers and for scanners in the warehouse, so that your operations technicians and warehouse technicians can wear them instead of using a handheld scanner. Like they can use like an AR based scanner, very simple entry level AR glasses, right? But to go back to that question, I think like a lot of third party vendors have enabled that. But then to go back to the question, the technical requirement of that is you need to have a continual, you need to think about your data pipeline, right? How are you going to like real time? Do you have your SLA? Does it require a real time inference for that, right? Like, do you need to be like streaming that real time? And then what kind of architecture do you need to build? So this goes back to that data engineering, data science kind of a discussion there. Do you have the right architecture? Do you have the right tools? Having the glasses in the warehouse, that's an easy part, right? I mean, a lot of them are actually like doing it as you speak for low cost. It comes, I think this one was only like $300 a piece. But then how are you going to transport it in the back end? How are you going to enable real-time inference out of it and then make decisions out of that? I think that is the part that every company, depending on your maturity on data and analytics, you need to find out what are the gaps that you have. If you want to enable this in your warehouse for safety and whatnot, then you need to be more intentional on that.
Thank you. I just want to touch upon two points. I know Nitin is already there, so I think he's maybe signaling us that we are towards the end of this webinar. But I just have two things. One is the ethical aspect of Gen AI / the challenges. That is what I wanted to talk about. Second is about the future, in the sense the future, the way that our supply chain is changing, as Siddharth mentioned. A same-day delivery, 2 hours delivery, a 2 hours delivery, and overnight delivery. I think the kind of risks that we are facing of the supply chain are changing. So I just want to touch upon the two topics. Pritham, I'll start with you from the ethical side of Gen AI, if you have some point of view on that. And then we'll probably talk to, we'll go around the table, and then we'll talk about the future of supply chain.
Yeah. I think more generic opinion on it rather than something that we are doing here, right? But yes, with AI and I think it was brought up already, right? In terms of the Gen AI kind of prioritizing the male applicants instead of female, just because of this being an imbalanced data set, right? So yeah, it's very important to make sure when we and that's where we are talking about responsible AI, right? I think we need to make sure that we make enough effort to kind of reduce those hallucinations. We need to reduce some of the inferences that a Gen AI application can bring up without proper relevance. And that is where, again, I'll talk about human in the loop, right? As long as we have human feedback in the loop, I think it will help to a certain extent, Samir, in terms of using AI responsibly.
Thank you. Sandeep, I'll come to you because you brought up that point on the algorithmic bias. I want to kind of hear back from you as well.
Absolutely. It is super important to make sure we do appropriate audits or frequent audits to make sure is the model performing to where it's supposed to be. Some of these machine learning models can be so complicated that you may not be able to explain why the machine learning model made that decision. So you would probably lose some transparency on why it generated that output. So it involves a lot of fine-tuning and hand-holding, and this would be an iterative process. It's not like you can just set up machine learning model once and it runs forever. Doing frequent audits is super important, and making sure your data is clean. We all know, we spoke about junk in, junk out, and not having biases in your data. This would help make sure that the model is running optimally. At the same time, never let the model do things on its own. There should always be a human element on top of whatever the model generates to say, yep, it makes sense, or it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sid, I'll come to you. You can give a point of view on this one. Plus, I also want to talk about between Sid, you and all about the future of supply chain and the use of Gen AI out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think where when we're talking about ethics in AI, we're talking about AI taking their decisions which are biased toward certain section, community, or people. Like one of the use case that I naturally experienced is that when we were doing this routing optimization, one of our objective is to give sufficient traffic to the truck routers also. But if one of the truck let's say one of the shipping companies starts giving me better costs for shipping, my model will eventually get biased towards giving major traffic to them also. So these kind of things, as both Preetham and Sandeep were touching, that there has to be a human loop to human in loop to kind of make sure that we are not taking certain decisions. We are slowly drifting towards a certain section of people, community, or whatnot. The challenge that we have is that though we have a lot of regular generic positive data, we don't have a lot of negative examples that are there which are recorded in your data. So training that models becomes a challenge. You don't have something which goes wrong and what action was taken, because those most of the time when you involve human, the action is human and it's not recorded in the data. So while you have enough data for positive use cases, you have very minimal set of data for the negative use cases. So there's huge imbalance in the data set with which your model you're training, which introduces this bias eventually. And that there are ways to correct that. There are ways to generate synthetic data, but how accurate that will be, I don't know.
You're right, actually. And that comes to, again, Arjun, the data is the basic thing that what I talk about. But Paul, I'll come to you. As what is the future of the supply chain, and how do you see some of the innovation and some of the technologies like Gen AI and all those things impacting the future of the supply chain?
The way I kind of see the future of supply chain is going to be a more seamless and transparent view of things. So by them using data analytics as well as AI, like I previously mentioned, they will be able to help streamline processes and procedures, reducing errors as well as expediting processes. I think the way that this is going to actually occur is going to be by doing, like we previously mentioned, use some collaboration platforms in order to help that to make some better decision making. I think some of the challenges that may occur is going to be in the beginning is going to deal with the integration with the current systems that we have, as well as the change in management aspect of it, as well as it relates to ensuring the correct privacy is being done.
Thank you, Paul. Arjun, last few thoughts on the future?
Yeah, no, sure. I think AI ML is just one component. I would say always think about first principles, especially in the mid office part of the supply chain. When you think about warehouse management or optimization or even like demand planning, I would say start from the first principles and then like work your way up, right? So that is like kind of like reflecting on the past, but then going into the future, I feel that IoT is coming to the front and center. Data size are increasing humongously, right? So I think like integration of IoT and AI is going to be there. So like I'm already seeing edge AI being like rolled out, especially for if you have big DCs or FCs or warehouses, and then a lot of safety and auditing and even like utilization and optimization is being done using cameras and IoTs. There you can't always transmit the data back to the server, so edge AI is going to be there. And what are the implications, right? Like yet to be seen. Smart warehouses are things of the future. I've seen like in like in like Amazon's Air FC, where drones were already being like experimented, right? Like the place where I stay is Houston, and close to me, College Station is a place where Amazon is already using drones to drop packages and whatnot. So when you think about smart warehouses, robots and wearables are going to be part of the warehouse, and then drones are going to become like more. So how does that ecosystem evolve is yet to be seen. And to me, I feel that future in the supply chain and a lot of other industries, right, both B2C and B2B, it's going to be more focus on customization and personalization. So the consumer would be the front and the center. So I think that landscape is also going to shift. So when you think about AI algorithm, AI algorithms will have a big role to play, but then you need to think about all these ethics and governance and everything, and how are you going to cater to your consumer or to your customer is going to be the key going forward.
Thank you, Arjun. Sandeep, any last few, your thought process, please?
Sure. Supply chains have evolved a lot over the last 10, 15 years. Not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, if you ordered something from Amazon or any website, you would get your product in 7 to 10 days. And we were fine with that. No problem. We would wait, and you'd be happy that you got the product without visiting the store. Now, if you do not get it the same day or 2 days at the max, you'll be like, what do you mean I don't get it in 2 days? I need it now. I'm going to find some other place where I'll get it in 2 days. Or as somebody mentioned, or even to the hours. So the expectations have changed a lot, and supply chains have to be super dynamic in terms of meeting our consumer demands. And it's going to become more and more expectations from supply chains. That means we need to use more and more research has to be done. New technologies will evolve. For example, again, looking at cars. If you were to order a car to the airport, you would have to order the day before, and you would get a yellow cab the next day. Now, if you do not get an Uber in 10 minutes, you'll be upset. Why do I have to wait more than 10 minutes? So it's just the evolution of consumer demands are changing. So does the technology has to keep up with that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So that said, any last few comments on this one?
Yeah, definitely. I'll quickly touch base upon all the use cases that I'm talking about, and there is a lot of scope, for the AI to contribute in those areas. We talked about network optimization, and then we talked about revenue maximization, pick path optimization for order management systems, and then finding out bottlenecks in your systems and eliminating them beforehand. Then customers trainings and all. One thing I think Arjun touched based upon this is one thing I see very strong use of AI enable coming up with the customization for the customers, even when you're doing an offering for your products within a supply chain company. I'm not talking about the end product, like not shoes or apparels or something. If you're providing let's say a service to end customer, or a service to a shipper or a e-commerce supplier, how can we customize the solution for them so that they get maximum benefit out of that? That is one area where we are struggling right now in generating the demand. One of the dark hole of all the supply chain industry, which big companies even don't dare to talk about, is the returns. So returns is still like living in dark ages. 10, 15 years ago, the technologies are there. That is one area I don't think we have explored enough, how we can utilize, Gen AI or AI as a whole to minimize, first of all, the returns. And then if the returns are eventually happening, how to make sure that we club the returns and in a certain way so that the least impact or least bad debt is generated from the companies.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Preetham, any final words before we kind of close this webinar?
No, I think you all covered it really eloquently. Just to round it off, I think, supply chain is as I said, supply chain is a microcosm of society. As a society, we are demanding more. Consumer demands, as Sandeep was talking about, we demand things faster. So I think agility is the key here, and we'll do, whether it is AI, ML, or overall Gen AI, I think we'll do whatever we can to keep supply chains more agile, and that is going to be the future, and we'll keep evolving.
Thank you. So guys, I really thank every single panel member that was there in this call. Thanks for joining this wonderful discussion. Nitin, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Samir, and thank you to all the speakers, who shared their thoughts. It was an amazing discussion, guys, and I was absorbed in all your conversations which was going on. So thanks a lot for bringing this together. So I'll just wrap it up. So, first of all, we extend our gratitude to our community partners, the esteemed speakers, and all the attendees who participated in this forum. I'm sure it gave a platform for knowledge enrichment. And as our panel members were exceptional, we appreciate their willingness to come together and share their valuable insights. Further, if any one of you who feel you missed something and wish to look back at the session, let me tell you that today's event was broadcasted on the YouTube page of our company. So you all can go and see the recording anytime. And if you are looking out for recent technological updates and advancements, log on to our website and social media channels. We'll be sharing lots of knowledge sharing topics, details, announcements of the next events, and much more, which will help you register and attend the same. Before we pull the curtains on, we would like to thank InfoVision, which is our knowledge and innovation partner. To understand more in depth and connect with them, all of you can go through their website, which is infovision.com, and stay abreast with the technological advancements. Further, there are a lot more in store for this year and the next year, with a focus on banking, financial, insurance, telecom, retail, healthcare, supply chain, manufacturing, energy, utility, and so on. So I request all of you to keep connected with us and enjoy the learning. It was a pleasure bringing this session to you, and we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. We look forward to having more sessions with you. Take care and have a great day and weekend ahead. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
guys. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for
Have a good
your
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good one.
Bye.